Hello. Hello, just checking everyone can hear me. Fantastic. Right, let's just have a look if I can fix this chat box. Seems a bit stretched outy. Whoops. What if I do this? Is that right? What's going on? I feel that's going to cut some of the chat off. What he's going to have to. Oh, I know what I've done now. It's this. There we go. Right, so hello everyone. Welcome to the stream. Thanks for watching today. What we're going to do today is I was chatting in John at Old School Coders channel, which I'm just going to give you a bit of a shout out, and quite a few people expressed an interest in learning how to make music for the Commodore 64. I'm not an expert on this by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not an expert on SID. I'm not an expert on making music with all of this. But I'm going to do the very best that I can to try and give you at least just the basics so that you are in a position to get some sounds out of GoatTracker, and then people that are more talented than me can make proper instruments and so on. Can you hear me now? I find that Discord's always really, really quiet. So it might just be that, or it might just be me. But I can come right up to the microphone if you like. It's a bit creepy. So yeah, so what I was intending to do, if everyone is content with it, I will get you from a position where you can start with a blank screen like this in GoatTracker, create some sounds, put some of it together, make a tune. So that's the ambition, that's the aim that I'm trying to do tonight, if everyone's happy. If you want to attempt to follow along, grab yourself a copy of GoatTracker from CSDB, by all means, and I'll answer any questions as best I can. But as I say, I'm not an expert in this. I'm just an enthusiastic amateur. I've only been doing this for about a year, but I know how difficult it was for me to get a sound out of GoatTracker, and I thought that the same might be a benefit to you. So first things first then, quick drink of my non-alcoholic beer. Hello. So first of all, I'm going to just give you a quick walk through the bits of the screen that I understand. And I don't know what all of these bits of the screen understand. But essentially, GoatTracker is made up of sequences of notes and events. It can play 3 simultaneous sequences, one for each one of the 3 SID chip channels. And you can, unlike an Amiga tracker, if you've used an Amiga tracker where each track or each pattern is the same, you can independently play patterns on each channel. I'll explain what that means later. So at the top here, Zenderic, you want to get the window bigger. Right, there's 2 things you can do. If you want it to go full screen on your monitor, Alt-Enter. I just pressed Alt-Enter there. Obviously it's broken on my screen, but that will make it go full screen. Otherwise, you need to start it from the command line, and you need to do that with -W 1, 2, 3 or 4 for the size that you want. Thanks to the host, Andy Magic Knight. So across the top here, you've got your 3 channels, channel 1, 2 and 3, and it's showing there which pattern is being displayed. You can, on a lot of this stuff, you can left or right click it. Left click to go up, right click to go down. So there's your patterns. Down here is the notes that you're playing. You can move up and down that with your cursor keys. And we'll be putting notes in later on. Across here is what you call the order list. So this tells you for channels 1, 2 and 3 which pattern to play at which point in the song. So you can actually play different patterns on each channel each time. You've got your instrument parameters here, which is for the currently selected instrument. Left click the instrument number to go up, right click it to go down, or use some of the keys somewhere. I don't know which one's there. Plus and minus. Yeah, plus and minus on the numeric keypad. And here's the wave, pulse, filter, speed table. I'll go through them. That stuff's just about the song. That's telling you what octave you're currently playing in when you play with the keys. That's telling you stopped. Don't know what that does. I think that's just telling you what line each channel's on. Look at the top. You've got a little menu. If you right click, you actually get a little menu bar, but you have to left click on the option that you want from that menu bar. And you can change your SID. And I don't know what that does. That 1 times there, don't touch that if you're making music for games. That's just how many times the play routine will get called. But again, we'll come back to that. So that's just basically what it's all about. Next thing you need to know is a couple of keyboard controls, because being this horrible DOS looking program, not everything's got a button. There's a document here and 2 documents here, which I'm going to share with you now. These are the idiot guides, and the lovely Steps created these. He created the second. One of them comes with the document, but essentially that tells you a lot of the stuff that you need to know, and we'll come to that as and when. But you'll see me looking at this bit of paper quite a lot. This helps me out. On the stuff that Steps created, it's got all the key things, but the ones that I use is the spacebar, which changes between jam mode, where you're not editing, and edit mode, where you are editing. You'll use that one a lot. The other one that I use a lot is F1 to F4. So F1 plays the song, F2 plays the current pattern, which is selected here. F3 plays what's shown on the screen, because what's shown on the screen isn't always what's on there. And F4 stops, and I use F4 quite a lot. And somehow, for some reason, all of the number lock type buttons on my keyboard have all started flashing all at the same time, and I don't know what that means. Who knows? It still works anyway, so stop. So that's what I do. You'll have to do me kind of swearing and shouting stop and stuff. That's because I can't remember which key it is that you press. So that's your keyboard, that's your mouse. F12 is the button that you'll be pressing a lot. F12 puts this screen up, and this basically tells you all the keyboard commands, all the pattern commands, all the stuff on there is what's on this sheet that I've just shared with you. And that's it. So that's how you use the program, and we'll go back over each step of that later on. The next step is that you need to make a sound, and before you can make a sound, unlike every other tracker program in the entire world, GoatTracker comes with nothing set up on it at all. Most other trackers will give you some kind of an instrument or something to play with. This one doesn't. So before you can do anything at all, you need to generate a sound, or you need to load in a sound. And again, helpfully or not, you don't get provided with any basic sounds to load. You just get some sample modules, which are so complicated that they'll stress you out. So each sound in the SID is basically built up of an envelope, an attack, decay, sustain, release envelope. I'm going to put a picture up on the screen to show you what I mean. And if I can, where has it gone? There. So that is an ADSR. So each element of a sound, as soon as you hit a note, there's an attack, and the length of time that your attack takes can change it from being a kind of a harsh thing like a piano hit or something slow. Oh, thanks, Prince Phase 101. Didn't know what that did. Never used that button in my life. So, as I say, not an expert. So that's your attack. That's the initial phase of the sound. And then as soon as that attack bit's finished, it settles down at a volume. So it might go louder and then settle down to a volume, which is the decay section. And decay is the sound. That's what I use more than anything to set the volume, the relative volume of sounds, because there isn't any volume commands in GoatTracker or on the C64, other than for all 3 channels together. Then the note holds in a sustain phase, and then when you set your hand off the key on the keyboard, hypothetically, it'll release. And so by changing these, you change the nature of the sound. Each one of these can be a number between 0 and F, and how you set that makes the sound change. Let's put GoatTracker back on, and I'll show you what I mean, because there's nothing better than... The hell is it? There it is. So, each instrument's built from ADSR. So if you start off with... Number lock's gone. Aha, we're back. Right. Okie dokie. So, I read them. So, before you can do anything, right, so you've got to set up an attack, a decay, a sustain, and a release. Just setting that up won't make a sound. Now, when you're in this section, you can actually press the space bar, which is edit when you're on this side of the screen. On this side, space bar is play your sound. If I press the space bar, nothing happens. And the reason is because I've not set up a waveform. So in order to create a sound, you need an ADSR envelope plus a waveform. And you set your waveforms in the wave table, which is shared amongst all the instruments. Needlessly complicated, I know. But if I put something into there, put some little notes in there, then what that then does is it says for this instrument, go to the wave table at the position there, which is position 1, and do whatever it says in this sequence of events. And what the wave table does is essentially, each time you call the play routines in the C64, so every frame, every 50th or every 60th of a second, it will call one of the routines in this while that note's playing. What does that mean? What that means is, if we set a waveform in this side, we can change the nature of the sound. Now don't worry about what I'm doing now. I'll explain it in a minute, but now there should be a sound coming out. Oops, a daisy. There we go. So, what have I just done here? First things first, that FF command just means that's the end of the series of sequences that I want this instrument to play through. So I can do loads and loads of commands each frame, each 60th or 50th of a second, but I terminate with an FF. So we're doing a simple one to start with. In here, you can put a number between 1 and, I think it's about 8 or possibly more. Yeah, it'll be more than 8. But what you need to know is what it's doing. If you put a 1, that makes a triangle wave. If you put a 2, that creates a, let me get it right, sawtooth wave. 3 is a square wave. No, it's not. 4 is a square wave. 8 is noise. So noise, pulse, sawtooth, and 1 is whatever the other one was. How to stop sound. Depends where you are. If you've just played a sound with the spacebar in this section, shift and space will stop it. If you're playing a note in this section, nothing ever seems to stop it. I press F1 then F4. Somebody who knows GoatTracker might know what the command is, but I basically press F1 to play and F4 to stop. But in this side, I can press space, shift, space. Okay, so that's your waveforms, and again they're written on this cheat sheet. If you put numbers between them, if you put 20, if you put 30, 50, 60, what it does is it combines the two waveforms together that add up. So a 10 and a 20 would combine to 30, would combine 10 and 20, which is triangle and sawtooth. In, let me get this straight, in an 8580 SID, it logically ANDs them together. In a 6581 SID, it does a logical OR together. Steps every piece of software in the entire world for music, doesn't it? It has a button that you press, a panic button that stops everything going. In GoatTracker it doesn't, because that'd be too easy. I mean, we've not even got Windows in this thing yet, it's just a DOS split box in it. But that's what you do, that's how you combine sounds, we'll come back to that. And the other thing that you need to know is the second part. So that's that first digit there sets your waveform. Second one sets the gate. What's the gate, I hear you ask? So the gate is the attack, decay, sustain, release window. What happens is when you start a sound playing, it plays the attack, decay and sustain. When you send a note off command, or release the key, which you'll do in the editor button there, it will turn the gate off again. You can also turn it off automatically, so you have a sound that's just a short sound like this one. And if you add some time, you see the difference between me setting the gate on and setting the gate off. I affects the length of the note. While you're in this bit, you can press the insert and delete keys to add or remove lines, and everything that you change in here will change. Oh, I'm doing the wrong screen. Everything you change in here will change relatively elsewhere. So if you create instrument 2 starting at point 3 in here and then add stuff in instrument 1, it'll move it down. Don't worry too much about it now. Let's make an instrument. That's the easiest way to actually understand it. So, starting from scratch, because that's the best way. So, to create an instrument, I'm going to create a short little, just a little lead instrument, just something that we can muck about with. No attack, short decay, longish sustain, long release. I'm going to go to wavetable position 1, and then I'll start editing down here to start creating the waveforms. If I do 41, which is a pulse wave, what I've done there is I've basically said on the first 50th of a second, on the first call of the play routine, play a pulse wave with the gate open. Second one, play a pulse wave with the gate open. Third one, do the same. Fourth one, turn it off. When I press space, you get that decaying sound. Now you can experiment with this stuff. You can change to a whatever a number 2 is, sawtooth. You see the difference, and you can flick between them. You can set it to noise. To put noise and then pulse, and you can combine together. So that's a little twangy lead sound. So is that sort of clear how I've done that? And the way that I come up with these things that I'm putting into it is basically trial and error. I'm not sure of any, I don't understand it enough to do it other than to the trial and error. But that's how you do it. We'll create another sound and we'll see how we get on. So as I say, you click with your left button here to go up a number, right button to go down a number. So if I create another one, your 4 sounds like nothing at the moment. So what have you got in your... Here, have you added something into the attack, decay, sustain, release and pointed the wavetable to the place in which you've set it? So you need to have... Right, it's all trial and error. Okay. You should have the same thing as me if you've done the same thing that I just have. If you've got everything showing the same as me on screen. The thing that can sometimes go a bit odd is you can sometimes have not set anything in the pulse table. Let me set the pulse table up. I'm trying to think if I have something the pulse table's put in. That's it. 88, not. So if you just do that. Try putting 88 in there. 01 in there. Edit means that you're editing the notes in the pattern. Jam means you're not. So if you're in edit mode, you can play stuff. If you're in jam mode, you can play stuff and it won't go in. Just want to make sure everyone's got a sound to play and then I can show you how to actually play stuff in. Press space. So press space, but in this, click somewhere on this side of the screen and press space to change it. If you press space in this side of the screen, it'll play. Yeah, Zendrick, sometimes just restarting GoatTracker does it. What happens is sometimes it'll reset your pulse table for no apparent reason and you just get clicks. And the solution to it is to set something up in the pulse table there, which I'm going to go through later on. Just to prove a point, let's double check. I'll start with a fresh GoatTracker and see what happens. There's a fresh one. So, what I've just added in there was 04, attack, decay, sustain, release, wavetable position 1, press tab to go to the next button. Once in, I'll do a 51, 41, 41, 40 FF, press space, getting a pop. So that's because I played something before we started. Pulse table 01, 8800 followed by FF. You can indeed steps, you can name your instrument. Let's give it a name. Pluck. So, anybody still not managing to make a sound out of it after doing what I just did then? Steps, yeah, possibly at some point. I don't think we'll get that far today though. Retrograde, you've still got a staticky pop. Make sure that you've got pulse table set there to 0, 1. And then your pulse table, do that. Don't matter which instrument you're on. But that's the most common cause of having a staticky pop. Perfect. Right, to get back to instrument 1, 2 ways of doing it. You can either click on this instrument number here with the right button, left button up, right button down. Or you can do plus and minus on the numeric keypad, which for some reason when I do it isn't working. There it is. Plus and minus on the numeric keypad. Just going to create a couple more instruments and I'll show you how to actually put them into a sound. I'll create one more. I'm just going to create a little bass sound. No idea if you can use instrument 0 or not. I've never tried it, so perhaps that's what we did wrong. I honestly don't know whether I normally use it or not. I couldn't tell you. I'm just going to put some numbers into here. And then we can experiment a little bit more. So what I've done is I've just put some numbers in. Put some C's in there. Short attack. Relatively long in the rest of them. And now I can use the same wavetable that I did before. Pulse 0, 1. That's interesting. That is a GoatTracker 2.75 thing, I think. He didn't do that in 7.4. But anyway, wavetable 1, pulse table 1. So I'm using the same pulses, but I'm using different attack, decay, sustain, releases. And if I put like an F into attack, it'll do this. So it'll sound like it's silent because I'm turning the gate off. Leave the gate on. A bit slower. Anyway. You can also just move down to your next space in the pulse table, which in this case is number 6. And then you can just start editing again. Sorry, the wavetable. Talk about the wavetable. Now I've done that, I'll explain what the pulse table actually does. When I did my last tutorial on this with 2.74 of GoatTracker, it had a default value in pulse table. It looks like that's a thing that it doesn't have anymore, which is just bloody typical of this. If we jump into pulse table position 3, wavetable position 6. Beautiful. You can also do other things in this. So where you've got this FF00, that means stop the pulse table. You can also loop it. So if you put FF06 in there, it'll jump back to position 6 and so it'll alternate between these two waveforms. And so you can start to create essentially little you can create little... That betch is wicked. Speaking. Let's try to stop the bloody thing. You create little loops, so essentially you create little programs that run in here, changing the waveform, setting the gate on, or with 0 setting the gate off, so triggering the release phase. And you can loop around if you wish. Next side is the pulse table. So in this one, if we point to pulse table number 3, the first command you need to know for pulse value is 8. And what number 8 does in the pulse table is it sets the pulse width. So you basically are setting the width. It's hard to explain a pulse width, but essentially what pulse width modulation does is your standard square wave goes, I'm trying to keep in the camera, it'll go up and down and up and down, and it will do that at a constant cycle, like that. When you do pulse width modulation, it will change the width of the cycle, so it'll create a more natural sounding note, and that's how you get a lot of the SID effects that you're used to hearing. Again, the easiest way to explain it is to show you. So you set a default or a starting pulse width, and I picked 666 for no other reason. 800 seems to be the one that it starts with. 666 is the one that I'm doing there. And then what you can do is you can put a number in here to 01 and 7F. Lovely bit of hex, apologies, those are art codes, but you can put a number in here and it will do one of two things. It will either increase or decrease the speed of the pulse, and it'll do it either up or it'll do it down. And again, that sounds a bit sort of bizarre, but I'll put some data into it and show you what I mean. I'll put some 6s in there, and then FF. This won't do anything much. If I put a loop in, just put it back to number 4, it'll start to change. And I can, if you change that 666 to different numbers, it'll be difficult to hear because it's, I have to do it on this side. Stop. Can't stop flipping it. There. You can hear it a bit better now. So what you're doing is you're just changing the width of the pulse. One of them makes it go up, one of them makes it go down. What it does is time is in the left column, speed is in the right column. So for 66 frames, it'll increase the speed by 66. If I change the 66 to 11, it'll change the, sounds terrible that. FF. So that sounds a bit horrible, but hopefully what you can see is that something is happening. So it's changing something each time I do that. So I'm setting a pulse width and I'm making an alteration to it. Basically it's trial and error in there to get stuff that sounds cool. But you've now got a couple of instruments. So now you can go to the other side and you can actually make some sounds. So you can change your instrument by clicking up or down on here. And you can play stuff in with the keyboard. Now on the keyboard, you can play different octaves. You can move up and down your octaves by clicking left or right here, or by pressing the slash or star on your numeric keypad. And then your keyboard is set out as if it's a piano keyboard. So your Q key is a C note. Not sure what it is. Does anybody know what you press to stop it from playing the sound other than playing and then pausing it again? I just want to play as long. Your C key, Q key rather, is the C, and then if I put it into jam mode with the space bar, going from Q up to P is the white notes on the keyboard, and the black notes are the ones above, so 2 and 3 are the black notes above. Hopefully you can see me playing that. And so that's how you play the notes in. Spacebar moves from edit mode to jam mode. And what I've just shown you on the top notes of the key with the Q key going across the P key also happens with the Z key going across to the M key. So you've got 2 octaves that you can play at once. In fact, the one after that does it as well. So, cursor keys move you up and down. I'm editing pattern 0 there. I'm going to edit pattern 1 for reasons that become clear. And that's how you enter notes. Press F1 to play them. Press F4 to stop. You can move between the channels. Yes, that's right. Or Shift F1 does follow play. I don't use Shift and F1 because follow play lags for me. It looks terrible. It makes it hard to see what's going on. But yeah, you're right. Shift and F1 will do it. Probably if you've got a decent PC. And you can put stuff into the different channels. And I'll explain in a second what that means. Which brings us across the order list. So what you're doing is when you're building up a song, you're basically building up patterns. Now each one of these is a separate pattern. Each one of these columns is a separate element in itself. And you can change them to show which ones you're showing on the screen. But just because you're looking at it on the screen doesn't mean that... What's Control F1 do, Prince Phase 101? Just because you're showing it on the screen doesn't necessarily mean anything unless you press the F3 key, which plays you what's on the screen. It's, again, very counterintuitive. What you'll see is that if I click up and show pattern 2 and show pattern 2 twice, it's the same thing in there. And if I make a change in one side, I'll make a change in the other side. How you actually put all this stuff together into a song is in here. This is your order list. So you can set different patterns. And you can have up to, like CF is your biggest pattern. You can set different patterns to play on different notes. I tend to keep not empty. How to stop? No idea. The way that I stop stuff in is I press F1 and then I press F4. I don't know if there's actually a stop note button. If there is, I've not found it yet. Unless that's Control F1 as Prince Phase says. But essentially you're building up your order in here. So if I just put some numbers into there. Yeah, F4. But F4 only stops if you're already playing. It doesn't necessarily stop everything. So I put in 1, 2 and 3 into there. What I'm saying is that on the first step of the song, I want to play pattern 1 on channel 1, pattern 2 on channel 2, pattern 3 on channel 3. If I click on it and press enter, it will transfer the pattern that I pressed enter on into the relevant space on here. So to get it to show what I'm going to play in pattern 1, I need to press on each one and press enter. You can play any pattern on any channel. So you can just as easily as doing 1, 2, 3, do 3, 2, 1. And it'll show you 3, 2, 1. So what I'm doing there, I'm setting the patterns that I want to play. And I'm pressing enter separately on each one to show what I'm editing. Once you're in here, you can press the insert and delete keys to add bits of the song. So if I press insert there, insert there, insert there, I've now added a second pattern to the song. And I can play the same thing again, or in a different order, or I can play nothing. I can do what I want. So I've created essentially a song. If I press spacebar, it moves this green thing about. And what the green thing does, the green thing is where you're going to play from when you press F2. I'll leave it on there for now. So it's spacebar in these sections to choose which one you're up to. Again, we'll make something a bit more interesting shortly. So that's your pattern editor, that's how it all comes together. Hold down the delete key and you can delete the notes that you've just put in. Let's just make a couple more sounds, do something a bit more interesting, and then we'll have a short break. So click. So I'm going to make a bass drum because these are some of the sounds that are useful to have, so it's handy to have them. So bass drum's got a short attack, relatively short decay, longish sustain, and a pretty quick release. We'll put it into position 9 on the wavetable because that's our next space. Noise with the gate open. Pulse wave with the gate still open. Keep it on a pulse wave, keep it on a pulse wave, and press some pulse tables. Do that, mate. So as you can hear, that's not too much like a bass drum, is it? But all will become clear. So what I've done is I've created a click, a noise, followed by a pulse wave. And when I press space, it plays that. So the next thing is what you can do with this column on the right. So this column on the right, you can do a couple of things. After the FF, it tells you which position in the pulse table you're looping back to. 0, means you loop back to nowhere, so it extends. But you can also put notes in. If you get the cheat sheet, it tells you two different things. There are relative notes and absolute notes. Relative notes play relative to the note that you've played here. So if I put a C6 or a C3 in there, every 4 bars, every bar, I don't know what the word, every bar, so every 4 lines, and set it playing. What you can do is you can actually put notes into here, and the notes are written on here. So I'm going to put some notes in. Looking at the absolute notes section, difficult to say, I appreciate, but I'll put it up on the screen, it's too complicated. So let me stop that. You can play any of the notes that the SID can play, which is between a C octave 0 to a C octave 7. Sorry, a B in octave 7. So it's got an 8 octave range. Lowest sound it can play is a C0, which I don't think you actually can play in GoatTracker. But play a C sharp in 0, and it'll tell you the code for it. So if you read the squares here, it'll tell you that 81 plays you an absolute note of C1. So let's try that out. And 81. Press the wrong one. DF. Right, stop. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to do a DF. I'm going to do the highest note that we can play because it was a noise. If you play noise in a really quiet note. See you later, Andy Magic Knight. Thanks for coming. I'll play in a high click. I'm then going to put some other notes in. Go a bit lower on that one. There you go. So what I've done now, I've played a really high click, followed by a lowish note, and the notes are going down. I can make it go the other way. If I do, I can end on a high note. And that's how you can make a little bass drum noise. So by changing these notes here, I'm changing the note that it plays. Step backs, yeah, that's fine if you go. I'll leave it on here. It should be able to catch up on it later on. We can also set up the pulse table at 0.6. Set a pulse width of 800. See how that's changed it? So F00, 100. normally do this with knobs and stuff, but obviously we don't have knobs because that'd be too easy. So 2 ticks, change the pulse to 300. So what I've done there is I've basically set it up so that after the click it plays for 2 ticks, and then I change the pulse width. Then for the longest time I possibly can, I can decrease the pulse speed by 3. So I can type a 3 in there, that'll increase the pulse speed. Shift and N will turn it into 2 is complete, I'll turn it into a negative number. So you've now got a bass drum. F4. Same thing again, type in the name of your instrument, set an attack, a decay, a sustain, a release, give it a wavetable position, up to 0E, oops, a daisy, give it wavetable position, jump down to the wavetable in that position that you've just done, use the cursor to create yourself some space. On this one, 81, noise, gate open, highest note you can play, or yeah, that's the highest note you can play. Okay, so that's created like an explosion sound. Oops, a daisy. Do that again. Noise, turn the gate off. End the wavetable entry. Changing this number here, we can create lower and higher sounds. Hopefully that makes some kind of sense. So what I've done there is I've just played a high note and a slightly lower note. We then give it a pulse stable position. So the next gap is at B. Jump into B. 8 sets the pulse width. I'll put some random numbers in. Let's see what happens. About this a little bit. Let's change the decay a little bit, take some of that decay off it. Change these notes around a little bit. I'm going to add another entry into there. Again, what I'm doing here is essentially a lot of this is just trial and error, just trying to find stuff that sounds quite cool. So I've just put a little set pulse width 800. Insert space. What I'll do is I will slowly decrease the pulse width. That's not too bad. So let's go back into here again and press spacebar, edit mode. Change every other one to a snare. display. We've now got a basic bass and a basic snare. So hopefully you kind of getting the idea now about how these sounds are being built up. So each time I'm setting an attack and a decay, and these can be 0 to F. I'm attacking sustain and a release, setting a wavetable position at the next space, which in this case is 13, jumping down to the wavetable in that space, and choosing what sound I want to do. 8 is noise, 1 means gate on, so always start with a 1. So DF, nice and high pitched. 10 the gate off, so initiate the release phase, slightly lower pitch, end the wavetable entry, hi-hat. So now you've got the hang of the wavetable. Let's give that a pulsar position of 1, just to make sure it's pointing at something. You've also got a filter table. And I'm not going to be going very far at all into the filter table because it is a bit complicated, the filter. But essentially what the filter does is it'll cut off notes, sounds above or below a certain frequency or outside of a band of frequencies. It's very trial and error because on a normal synth you just twist a knob until you got the sound that you wanted. With this you're typing hex digits in, which seems to be the way that C64 musicians operate, which is bizarre. But you've got 3 filters. You've got high pass, which cuts off low notes, which I'm going to use on this hi-hat. You've got low pass, which cuts off high notes, which makes everything sound muffled. And you've got a band pass, which cuts off everything above and below a band, which you can set the position and width of. I'm not so good at that. On the cheat sheet again, filter tables at the top right. And what it basically does is it gives you a list of things. You can set the filter cutoff with the 00 command, and then you set steps in it of 0, 1 to 7F, the same as you did with the wavetable. And basically you're going up or down, whatever's in the right column. So you're basically setting a number of steps that you want to do. Let's just set the filter up. And then you're setting whether it's going up or down, so it's whether the filter is going downwards and increasing the sound or going up and filtering it more. I will explain. To set the filter itself is the C command. And what I always do, see you later, Zenderic. What I will do is I will just set up a really basic thing. So I always set up as my first filter entry C 0 0 0 followed by FF. That turns the filter off. That's your panic mode. So for anything that you don't want to have a filter on, you can set it on filter table position 1 and it won't be filtered at all. What else you can do with the C command is you can set different types of filter. So first thing is that you set the channel. The filter type. That should be 8000. So 8000 means no filter at all. You can then set a low pass filter with 9, a band pass filter with A. I'm reading this off the screen. B does band pass and low pass together. C does high pass. There's various different combinations that you can muck about with to try. And you can also set a channel mask. And the channels can be anything from 0, which means on no channels at all, to 7, which affects every channel. So your filter, it's important to remember, only affects a particular channel. So if you play this instrument in channel 1, it will have the filter. If you play it in channel 2, it won't, which is a bit bizarre, but that's the way it is. You also set the filter resonance from 0, meaning no filter, to F, meaning that. So you've got C, which means set filter, 0, which means on none of the channels. Sorry, is that right? Yeah. C0 means high pass filter. Get my head. F means at the maximum resonance. 1 means on channel 1. FF means stop reading that. Point the filter table of the instrument at number 3, which I'm going to do after it's playing, and you'll see what it does. So we play. I need to put some into here, don't I? So let's just put some. So change that to channel 2. filter table to position 3. You should hear the sound changing. Not very much. I didn't set a filter cutoff, so that's telling me which channel I'm going to affect the filter on. The next thing is the 0, 0. It sets the where you're going to cut it off. So where I set that cutoff, you should hopefully be able to hear a change in that hi-hat sound. If I play something else on channel 2, that will now inherit that filter setting that I've set up there. So what you need to make sure is that every instrument that you don't want a filter on points towards an 8000. Otherwise it's going to filter it every single time. And you can do sweeps and stuff with the filters, but I ain't going to go into that now because I don't fully understand it myself. And it would be unhelpful. But what you should have now is you should have the following. Right, I don't need all that answer there. So I'm going to delete all the stuff that's in here, and I'm going to create a little drum track with my 3 instruments that I've got so far. You've now got 2 more channels, so we set it up in the order list to play pattern 1 across there. Pattern 2, pattern 3. Stop with F4. You can now pick up, with the minus and the plus keys on your numeric keypad, you can pick up your other sounds. Let's just amend that bassy sound that I created because I'm not too happy with that one. So that's going to wavetable position 6, which is there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to click in the wavetable there and press insert. I'm going to add a 40, but I'm going to put 0 to initiate the release phase. And I'm going to get rid of that. There we go. So what that's doing now is on the first frame, when it picks up, you play it, it jumps to wavetable position, wavetable position 6. And now it's just got a little bit there. So what you can do now is play some notes. So you can change your octave with the slash and the star key on your numeric keypad, or by clicking with your left and right button on here, and you can play just need to change my filter to go to channel 1. Tap moves around the screen. So you can put notes in. And there you go. That is how you make music in GoatTracker. So hopefully you're now in a position where you've got some instruments that you can start mucking about with. and you can start to, I'm not sure it's pressed there, and you can start to put them into patterns on the left hand side. I'm going to go for a short comfort break. I'll come back again and I can either finish up or I can show you how to create some slightly more complicated stuff like chords and bits and pieces like that, or I can answer any questions or leave you all to get on with it. Retrograde, press the backspace key. So again, nuance of GoatTracker. If you're in edit mode and you press the delete key, everything moves up. Insert key fixes it. The backspace key inserts the delete. So basically backspace is delete and delete is backspace. A little bit backwards, but there you go. So I'm just going to whiz off for a couple of minutes. I'll be back shortly and then we can pick up hopefully any more. What I'm going to do is just load in a track and then I'll try and dissect for you a little bit how that track works, if that's of any assistance to you. So let me save this one. So right, okay, saving before we go. Right click, press save, save your song, give it a name, press enter. That'll save. You can also right click and load, so you can load it back in again. So you hold on right click and load, pick a random one, Hide Sword 2, Fairroy, pick a subtune, press F1. Hello again. Right, I'll load that song back up because there's one thing that I need to show you. I've just pressed an odd key on my keyboard. There we go. If I just load that stream thing back in again. So what I've just shown you there is I've shown you in the wavetable when we made those drum sounds, absolute notes. So it always plays the same note. What that means is I'm in jam mode and I'm playing that drum. No matter what note I play, and you can see that I'm playing different notes on the keyboard, it plays the exact same pitch. The other thing to learn is how to do a chord. Prince Phase 101, yeah, I can stick it on YouTube. I'm not sure it'll be much use, but I'll stick it on there. The one that I've already got on there might be more useful than this one, but I will stick it on YouTube if people want me to. So yeah, just let me pull some chords into this as well, because that's the other thing that's useful to know is your relative notes. And what that means is that whatever note you play, it will play a note relative to that one rather than a specific note. So rather than playing a C every time, it'll play, if you're playing a C, it'll play a different one. Showing you is easy to explain. Just let me create a basic sound. Just trying to find a decent setting to create a sound from. That'll do. Right, put some notes in. So attack and decay, sustain and release. Give it wavetable position. Scrolling down to find my next three wavetable positions. Probably a shortcut for this, but I don't know it. 18. Go to wavetable position 18. At wavetable position 18. Put in whatever that is, a 2, kind of thing, sawtooth wave, just like we've done before, and then end, and that should hopefully, is that making a sound? It's not making a sound. Why is that making a sound? Because I'm not giving it a full still position. Is it? Let me think. You want my attack's too short, is it? Yes, you're right, we're to position 18, I put should be 17. There it is. Thank you, glad somebody knows what they're doing. Okay, so once it's in position 17 there, that's just playing your note. Now what you can do is if I put some more space into there, turn that gate back off again. There we go, nice little bump noise. A bit more sustain on that. Right. So what we're doing is we're playing sawtooth with the gate open, and then we're initiating the decay phase. Now, in this column, if you use numbers beneath hexadecimal 5F, it'll play a relative note. So 1 will play basically a note 1 higher than the one you've played. So if I play a C, it will play a C sharp. It's a bit easier if I just... Can you hear that it's just going up a little bit? And if I make that bigger, it'll go higher. Now, bit of boring musical theory, but if you play the note that is a distance of 4 away, and the note's that distance of 7 away, and the distance that is C away, C is an octave higher, that's playing a major chord. If we loop that, so we go and loop back to, not with the gate open, but the one afterwards, number 18, it's going to loop. If I give it a bit more sustain, you'll be able to hear what's doing a little bit better. If I make it a little bit shorter so that I'm doing it in fewer frames, you'll get the classic C64 arpeggio sound. And so you can change how quickly it's alternating between these notes. And you've got a chord. And then when I go into the other side and start playing about with this, if I'm in jam mode, whatever note I play, it'll play it relative to what I'm playing. So a major chord is that. You also need a minor chord, that's your basics that you're going to need. If I jump to, I do the same as what I did before. Just copying it across. 8FFA. Wavetable position 20. Jump to wavetable position 20. 20. 1. 0, 0. 20. 20. I don't think I actually need all those 20s, but we'll find out. And then if we do 3 and 7. And C is the octave, it sounds nice if you do that. And jump back to 21. I've got a major and a minor. So if I alternate between the two, whoops, a daisy, what's happened there? I'm in jam mode. So And if I change down, major chord, minor chord. And with those basic notes, I think you should have enough to be able to play or to create at least a very basic song. So we'll try and put one in. So first things we do, I always leave pattern 0 free for silence. So I put 1, 2 and 3 in there. I press enter on each one to bring them across into my edit screen. We should still have our drum track in there. In track 2. Edit one. I keep pressing space because space normally plays in these things. So you can put notes in. You can muck about with the sustain and the notes and make them a bit shorter. And then you can start mucking about and you can start adding chords. And you've got a little song. Let's stop. Can I distribute this file on Discord? I certainly can. How do I do it? If I can work out how to open the folder that it's in, I'll do that now. So basically what you should have then is I've just given you the absolute bare bones basics. I've not done any effects, nothing special, nothing particularly clever. That's just the absolute basics. I try and get the damn thing to make a noise so you can start experimenting and playing stuff. There's loads of other commands that you can try. You can do stuff in this column to do note effects and things like that. You've not even touched the speed table yet, which does some bits and pieces. But if there's any interest, I'll do another stream to try and explain that a bit better in the future. If there's not, you know, struggle and you'll pick it up yourself. It's tough to get to the point where you can understand what's going on. But once you work out how it thinks in its mad computer brain, it does kind of make a kind of sense. It's painful because if you look at modern tracker software, all this hexadecimal number crap could just be knobs and clickable fields that you could bring up and down. But you're having to kind of just put random numbers in to guess stuff. And where I've got these instruments here, these are basically based on ones that I've been developing over the year, trying to just hone it down. And it is just trial and error. It is just trying to get the best things. You can steal people's sounds. So if you've got a song file, you can steal the sounds out of it. And the way you do that is, remember I said in here, you can right click and you can do load and you can do save. You can do the same thing in the instrument section. So if you're in the instrument section and you press F, whatever it is, to load or save, I use this one. and click save, it saves the instrument rather than the song. So you can save instruments out of song files if you've got them, and you can also load them back in. Just got to remember to be in this box, not this box, otherwise you're loading or saving a song. Because quite logically, the same key does a different thing completely differently, depending on which box you're currently sitting in. But you can load and save them into there. But I'm hoping that you've got the kind of the basics of how to get something playing. And we can muck about with order lists and stuff like that in the future if you wish to do so. I'm just going to save this song, which is called stream.sng. And I'm going to go and drop it into Discord. And then you can tinker about with it as much as you want. As I say, I'm not an expert on this stuff. I'm an enthusiastic amateur. I've only been doing this for a short amount of time, and I'm just kind of making the most of it. And my aim is not to come across as some kind of expert that knows everything, because I'm not, and I don't. It's to try and get people like me who have got some kind of, I've got a basic, I think, musical ability to get something out. But somebody with a basic musical ability just needs that kind of starting point of getting a sound out of the damn thing, so you can play stuff. And if I've achieved that, then I've achieved what I aim to do today. I'm just trying to work out where the heck I put the file. There it is, stream.sng. So I'm going to stick that into John's Discord now, while we're on. And one of the good things that you can do now is, now that you can make instruments, it's actually worth prattling about for a bit and just making as many instruments as you can, so that you can then load them in. And I've basically got a kind of a real basic set of sounds that I use for most songs, and I develop it from there. I'm going to drop it into resource sharing. And that is the GoatTracker sounds from Stream. So it's in resource sharing on Old School Coders Discord channel now. John, have you got a link for your Discord channel that we can share with Retrograde, and you can come and join us? Your best bet is if you follow Old School Coder and then watch one of his streams. I'm sure that it'll all be linked into there. What have I got on here? Some random stuff. So once you've got a few sounds, there we go. So click on there. Once you've got a few sounds, you can start to combine them together. So in this Instrument Forever, this isn't one that I made. This is one that I pinched. This sound. The song's mine, but the sound is not mine. What's happening there is you've actually got a bass drum sound, a noise sound, that is then immediately being followed by a 0-0, which means the note that you played. So it plays a bit of absolute note change followed by another bit. So you've got basically a bass drum, and it's mixed in with different sounds. And that means you can do stuff like this in one channel. And you can do, you can even do kind of two-channel stuff so that you can fit sound effects in. But all the stuff that's in there, all that is just the same principles that I've just set aside. Those sounds were based upon the ones that I've just shown you. If you look at that bass drum plus bass sound, it's the same noise followed by a note that I've just put onto there. It's just been built up a little bit more. And there's a whole stream potentially in just how to actually compose for this kind of nonsense. Stuff like the Sean Fight one where I've did some two channels for, I think it's an aborted project now, but you've got to combine stuff across the channels in a way that makes it sound quite cool. and just muck about with drum sounds and stuff. Okay. So all this is the same sounds that I've just shown you then, slightly amended. So that, in a nutshell, that is as far as I was kind of aiming to get today, I think. I don't think I want to do too much more. I'm just looking into there. So, other stuff that I could look at is, we could look a bit deeper into building songs and patterns, but essentially you've got to have an idea, you've got to have a musical idea, and it's probably worth watching me when I'm working. I tend to stream when I'm working on this stuff. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do with patterns. And once you've got it already, Chiswick, is there any open source repo? No. What I did is I went to CSDB and did a search for SNG files, and a few people have shared their song files. So I just basically nicked them. The other thing to do is drop us a line on Discord, and I'll send you everything I've got, and you can do them. What you've got to remember is C64 music is procedurally generated. It's a little bit like what I was talking to an Old School Coders channel earlier on. Because it's procedurally generated, you can't necessarily make every sound. So GoatTracker cannot play every sound that you've heard on the C64, because a lot of that will be dependent upon the player of the person that did it. So the one that most of us want to emulate is probably like the Rob Hubbard sounds. Unless you're using his player, you can't emulate his sounds. Some of the stuff that he does, like that dive bomb effect in Crazy Comets at the end of each phrase, where it kind of goes... You can't emulate that in GoatTracker, because what he's doing is he's taking a variable and he's alternating between the note that's being played and a variable which is being decreased each time. You can't amend variables in this, so because you can't access that. You can't create necessarily all the same sounds. So sometimes it's impossible to recreate the sounds in GoatTracker, but what you can do is you can reverse engineer GoatTracker sounds, but you need the song file, you need this .sng file to do so. I'm more than happy to share all the ones that I've done with anybody that wants to hear it, and you can have a look and see how it's all made up. But yeah, the last thing I wanted to just cover, just at this stage, is that once you've got your song, so if somebody provides you, if you've got a musician that doesn't really understand how C64s work, but has learnt how to use GoatTracker, and you need to copy... just learnt that right-clicking selects, didn't know that. Once you have created your song, once you've got your song, and I'll load back our stream song again, the last thing to do is to pack it ready for your game that you're going to put it into. So if you get a song file like this and you want to put it into a game, you can't just put this into a game. You need to create essentially a bit of machine code that you'll then call in the game. So in this one, you've got a pack, relocate. So you can pack a song or you can relocate it. If you hold on right button, click on that, there's a series of options here that you can set up. Basically, you can leave most of it as it is. I can tell you what these things do, but I won't right now. But you basically leave these as the defaults. And then you choose whereabouts it's going to be compiled to in order for your programmer to put it into their game or their bit of software. And traditionally, most SIDs tend to go into $1000, just because that's not accessible by the VIC chip, so it's a good place to put it. But you can, using the cursor keys, set it anywhere. Press enter. You then can choose the 0-page addresses, and you need 2 sequential 0-page addresses for a GoatTracker song that have been used elsewhere in the game or in the piece of software. And so you can change them again with the cursor keys. And then you can choose the format, and you left and right change it. So you've got raw binary, PRG, which has got a native format, or SID. The only difference in terms of including it into your game is how many bytes you skip at the beginning. You might as well just use binary if you know whereabouts it's being compiled to, but SID includes, it tells you within the file itself where to play it from, so it'll play on more players. And it'll tell you exactly how many bytes it's using. So that's your play routine, your song table, and so on. So you can work out how to trim it in order to fit into your bit of software a little bit better. I won't go any further into that until unless we need to, because that's potentially a stream in itself. But that is the way in which you would save it, so that you can play it. And once you're in assembly, you just basically include it into your program at the address it's compiled to. And if it's at say $1,000, you do LDA 0 JSR $1,000, and that just creates it. That initializes the thing. And then every frame, every 50th of a second, you just call JSR $1003, and there's your song playing. Stop calling $1003, it stops playing. You can change the subtunes and so on, but I won't go into that now. But you can do a lot of other stuff. But basically, that is how you play it. It's that simple, just by including that bit of machine code. And yeah, if you save it in SID format, it'll play in SID play. So what I'm going to suggest then, I'm going to suggest that I call it a night shortly, just because we've learnt a lot tonight. John says that I need to set you some homework, so I'm going to set you some homework. And my homework is using those sounds that were just created today on stream or something similar to them. See if you can make a little song with more than one section of the order list and get it to play. And then I'll come back and stream again if there's any demand for me to do so, and take it on to the next stage. But keep in touch with us in the Discord channel, in John's Discord channel, Old School Coder. I think was up there. I'm going to copy the link down again, and I'll answer kind of any questions that I possibly can, or I'll do a stream to explain anything else that I can. It's difficult because it's really difficult to get across the concepts, because it's such an alien concept to anybody that's used any bit of music software in the last kind of 30 years. But it does kind of make its own kind of quirky logic once you've got your head around it. What I would recommend if you have an iPad is buy a bit of software called GoatTracker C64 for the iPad. Essentially it's the same thing, and it does all the same jobs, but it does it with knobs and sliders that you can touch and scroll about on the screen. What I do is I design my sounds in GoatTracker 64, and then I translate them back into this again, based on what I've created in there. That seems to be the easiest way for me to do it. And they don't always translate one-to-one, but you can kind of get the idea of roughly what it is that you're doing. That's the one, GoatTracker 64. It's excellent. It costs a few quid. I think it might be about £8 or something like that, but I promise it's well worth it. If you hear any of Jason Page's stuff that he's doing now, nearly all of that is done on GoatTracker, and it sounds absolutely stunning because it's just such a fantastic, easy to use bit of software. The only problem is that it doesn't make music suitable to put into games. It doesn't export into GoatTracker format because it's got a different player, so you can't do it. The reason that we're using this horrible DOS-looking bit of software is purely because of game software, because it makes small stuff, small files for the C64, and you can play sound effects with them really easier. Retrograde 77, any PC stuff on CSDB for editing sounds? Not that I've seen. There might be, but I've not seen any. I kind of hoped and I kind of thought that the SID tool in CBM PRG Studio was going to do this, and I can do a stream on sound effects, but I thought that was what that was going to do, and it doesn't. It just kind of sets the registers. But what would be really cool is if there was some kind of knob-based utility that gave you numbers that you could type into here, or if that was actually part of the software itself. Because filters in particular, if you ever used a real synth, filters, you just prat about with them. You set your sound up, and then you turn a knob and see how it affects the sound. And that's what I'm doing here when I'm experimenting with different numbers, but it's just not a very user-friendly way of doing so. People like, for some reason, I don't know why it is, but C64 musicians love big long lists of hex numbers that look kind of random. And there is no doubt that GoatTracker makes really cool small files that fit into software really, really well. It's just not pleasant for a musician to use at all. Chiswick, no problem mucking about with hex numbers. You kind of get used to it, because if you started with Amiga trackers as I did, you sort of get used to using hex numbers for stuff. It's never pleasant. At least in Amiga, you kind of heard a sound, sampled it, and played it back again. In this case, you've not. So to understand what you mean, you need to go Chiswicked to here, and anybody else that is on the stream, and download these two bits, these two PDFs. There's that one, which comes with GoatTracker, which tells you what all the hex numbers mean when you put them into the different places. And there's this other side, which is from Steps. Yes, Rusty Bates, we do need a Windows version of GoatTracker 64, but they declined to make one. They said they didn't want to do it. The problem is that even if they did a Windows version of GoatTracker, unless you just want to make music for music's sake, it's kind of useless, because the beauty of the killer app, if you like, of GoatTracker is that it works in games better than any other option. So what we really need more than anything else is a GoatTracker style interface that produces sounds compatible with GoatTracker. And I know that Jason Page is working on one, but I've not seen any progress in that for some time. You might have seen GoatTracker, which came with the Rob Hubbard Kickstarter. It's better than this, but it's also an absolute nightmare, and it only produces output in assembly language format for a specific assembler that I don't know how to use, and I don't need any more steps or faffing about with different assemblers or translating or whatever inventory. I just need to be able to save a thing and put it in a game. And so that's kind of what we're hoping for this. So I'm sure that somebody would do it, but it's, as I say, it's odd that nobody has wanted to do one before, but I suppose it's because musicians and coders tend not to be overlapping in that Venn diagram. And once you've got used to using this, it's actually quite it's not user friendly. I would never pretend that, but it's actually quite an efficient workflow. Once you've got your head around what it does, it's frustrating sometimes that the key bindings are different to every other bit of music software that I use, and it's frustrating some of the nuances of how it works. But once you've got it set up, you'll find that I can actually work quite quickly. So you'll see that I'll do a stream where I'll start with a blank GoatTracker, and within an hour I'll create a complete song. So you can do stuff really, really fast in it. So it is actually quite a fast workflow once you're used to it. The problem is it's the experimenting stages, the creating your own sound stages. So that's why most of us tend to use either very basic sounds or the same sounds as each other, which we've nicked from the same set of song files. But c'est la vie. Okie dokie. Is there any other questions that anybody would like me to try and answer or cover? And again, I'll qualify it as I keep doing, that I'm not an expert by any means whatsoever in using this software or making music or any of the rest of it. But I think, because I've come from such a sort of a bad starting point, I think I've worked out, hopefully, how to use it. Oh, thanks C64 Matt for putting that PDF version of the manual. That's quite useful, that one. So yeah, I think that the homework, as I say, old school code, I think the homework should be take those instruments. So create some instruments, tinker with them all you want, but try and create a little song. See if you can create a song from scratch, putting the instruments in, even if it's these same instruments, and have something that you can kind of share with the group. And in a week or two, we'll come back again and I'll take a look at some of them, or I'll answer some questions, or I'll try and address the things that prevented you from being able to do the homework, whichever one it needs to be. Okie doke. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call it a night at that then. Thank you so much everyone who's watched and followed and all the rest of it. I really genuinely appreciate you coming down. What I normally do is I normally stream myself producing bits of music for different systems and so on. And I don't do a C64 very often at all now. I'll mainly be getting commissions on Spectrum and bits and pieces like that. But I do every now and again stick a bit of SID on, and nearly always when I'm working I go and stream. So if you want to follow me, that'd be really great. If you don't want to follow me, you don't have to. But if you want to follow me, I don't stream at any particular time. I just kind of stream when the mood takes me. But generally it's on a weekend and generally it's on a Sunday. Thanks again for watching. Thanks again for being around. We're going to drop a raid into Hitch, who's one of my favourite retro coders. And I will see you all really soon. Thank you.